బడ్జెట్ కి సంబంధించి నిర్మలా సీతారామన్ మాట్లాడుతున్నారు. ఇప్పుడు లైవ్ చూద్దాం.
I welcome you, ma'am, to this press conference. I also take this opportunity to welcome the Honorable Ministers of State, Sri Pankaj Chaudhary ji and Dr. Bhagwat Karaj ji. On this occasion, we also have with us Finance Secretary Expenditure, Dr. TV Somanathan, Secretary Economic Affairs, Sri Ajay Seth, Secretary Deepam, Sri Tuhin Kant Pandey, Secretary Revenue, Sri Sanjay Malhotra, Secretary Financial Services, Sri Vivek Joshi, Chief Economic Advisor, Sri V. Anant Nageshwaran. I welcome you all to this press conference. Friends, first the Honorable Minister will give her opening remarks. Thereafter, we'll be taking questions from you. Before I request the Honorable Minister, I must request you all to please follow the norm of one organization, one person, one question, please. Don't club too many questions together. That will help us give opportunity to your friends. With this, I request Honorable Minister of Finance to please begin the opening remarks.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for being here now after the budget has been laid on the table of the House. As opening remark, I'll just give a few indications of what has been highlighted in the budget. Broadly, I think the 4 emphasis points are on empowering women, giving a lot more attention to the SHG groups which are in the rural areas, trying to scale them up, give them the opportunity to brand and produce and also market their products in a far more scaled up and professional manner. Emphasis on tourism and training of youth for readying themselves for tourism, specific action for 50 destinations where comprehensive tourism action plans will be introduced. Then what is being called as PM Vikas, looking at Vishwakarma, people who create things, make things out of their hands using tools. In some states they are called Vishwakarmas, in some other states some castes are referred to as Vishwakarma, but what we mean here is to cover all those artisans and craftspeople who do things with their hands using some tools, so not specifically only to some particular communities, but to all who create the soft power of India through their craftsmanship. Then the 4 is green growth, the 4th one, which is in every sphere of life we have policy interventions and enabling provisions made so that India moves fast on the transition to renewable energy. The investments made for hydrogen mission, renewable energy transitional facilities which we need, natural gas, and also looking at biogas, also evacuation of power from renewable energy sources located in Ladakh to the rest of the country. So those are 4 highlights which I'd like you to go back to see the scale in which we are approaching these issues and the impact that it will have on large sections of India's population. Then, of course, I gave 7 priorities, which began with talking about inclusive growth, investments in infrastructure, also reaching the last mile so that those who are still left without a house or a sanitary facility or a road which is reaching them, and so on. So the last mile, reaching the last mile for those who desperately need that kind of a link are all being covered. Then we are also looking at a very futuristic fintech financial sector for which we have brought in some specific ideas. We are looking at also improving the industrialization of this country, where people will be trained for Industrial Revolution 4.0, which means they're going to be trained for AI, IoT, using Web3 in other words. So training manpower to ready themselves for industries which are rapidly becoming industrialized in the Web3 context. Then digital economy, unleashing the digital power of India in various walks of life, setting up an artificial intelligence research center, center for excellence. So all these are in part A. There's a lot of increase in the agriculture credit availability, 20 lakhs being made available for agriculture credit. Also a sub-scheme under the PM Matsya Sampada Yojana, making sure that people living in the coastal areas are going to benefit from it, fishermen are going to benefit from it. Now, if largely the part A has looked at these, part B has aimed at rationalizing the customs duties, also making sure personal income tax, after a very long time, has had substantial changes which will benefit the middle class. And also because this country has been waiting for direct taxation to be simplified, also waiting for direct taxation to be a lot more easy in compliance, and therefore the new taxation regime that we brought in for direct taxation 2-3 years ago has now got greater incentives, greater attraction, so that people can unhesitatingly move from the old to the new. Of course, we are not compelling anybody. Those who want to remain in old can still remain there for enough justifications that they can have. But the new one obviously is now attractive because it gives greater rebate. It also provides for a simplified and smaller slabs, lower rates of taxation, and also slabs which are nicely broken down. So with all this, I think the budget, I've not gone into specifics, but I thought as an opening remark, this much will be sufficient to say this is a budget which is beautifully balanced, both growth considerations, because the capital investment has never before seen double-digit investment announcements. 10 lakh crore, which includes 1.3 lakh crores being given to states, is going to give a big leg up for capital investment from government. So the balancing that I'm talking about is looking at public sector investments, continuing that good tradition of capital investment in infrastructure, and also attending to MSMEs, because they are the engine of growth. We've given them relief, we have also given them new access, we have extended and widened the emergency credit liquidity guarantee scheme, also given them back their securities, 95% of it, even if they fail to deliver on contractual promises which were during the COVID pandemic. So the balancing is, one, we could sustain the capital infrastructure expenditure from the government, simultaneously in the private sector give a lot of push and impetus for the MSME, and not forgetting the individuals, the middle class individuals who needed that kind of a tax breaks and relief through taxation. So the large macroeconomic considerations have also been kept in mind. The fiscal consolidation has not been kept in the back burner. We've attended to it. We are respecting the glide path we gave ourselves 2 budgets ago. 6.4 this year fiscal deficit, and the forthcoming year for which the budget is presented now, 5.9% fiscal deficit. So broadly, I leave it at this. I suppose when you ask questions, we can answer the rest. Thank you. Thank you for coming here today.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Shishir here from Hindu Business Line. Ma'am, my question is that when there is an announcement for 7 lakh rupees under new tax regime, that will no tax to be paid, and then you are talking about rejigging the new tax regime, does this mean that this is the end of exemptions for various incentives, exemptions for investment and savings?
Well, I've already addressed this, I think. We want to make the new tax regime, which is without exemptions, attractive enough for people to think that this will be the best option. So make the compliance a burdensome exercise. If rates are so low, you're going to benefit net by gained farm would have resulted in probably net amount being the same. So we made this a lot more attractive. But if there are people who still think that being in the exemption regime, which is the old regime, benefits them, they're welcome to continue where they want. But yes, the ultimate attractive, and that is why we've come up with this. Why we've come up with this.
Ma'am, firstly, many congratulations on that fiscal consolidation, because I keep asking you that question. But the issue today is about people in terms of, there is a big gamble in terms of capital expenditure. When you do that, does it actually trickle down to the people? Does it create jobs? I know you've been doing this for the last 2 years. Are you sure that this will really trigger off job creation, one, to, money in the hands of the poor people? The second, of course, is about inflation, which, again, you, like last year, you haven't really touched about it, but you have had the letter from RBI. Your chief economic advisor yesterday says we are in uncertain times, but, we hope that it will be under the check of 4 to 6%, hopefully the lower band of RBI. What is your, answer to both these points?
First of all, on the inflation, I think, yeah, you're right in saying RBI wrote a letter and what. But in the meanwhile, you've seen inflation come down, both the CPI and WPI. Action is being taken by the government. We take inflation-related steps as and when things develop in the ground and in response to it. And that has borne result. So inflation is not something which we are looking the other way while it is changing up and down. We have kept attending to it, and as a result, you find the result. On fiscal consolidation, you asked me the question, and I've already explained that we've attended to it with all earnestness, having respected the glide path we gave ourselves earlier. Jobs. Yeah. See, first of all, I find it a bit odd you may want to ask this question like this. Capital expenditure. I would have appreciated if you asked me, you said something in the BE, but you have not really exhausted what you put forth. You have not really used it in the ground. It is unfulfilled in the sense targets have not achieved. I would have been happy to answer if that were to be the case. But you're asking me a question about, in the sense you are implying that we have fully utilized what has been kept for capital investment. Therefore, it makes me feel odd that you're asking a question of actually have jobs been created or not. When projects are undertaken and money is utilized, and that it is utilized is coming through from the budget statement, how would the projects get completed without manpower, without jobs? Not all projects can be completed, even 1%, without human intervention. So obviously jobs are happening in the ground. So
Ma'am, I want to ask you, ma'am here. Ma'am, I want to ask you what percentage of taxpayers had moved to the new tax regime in the last assessment year? And is there a number that you expect, 50%, 60%, whatever? And number two, ma'am, there's a specific mention for expenditure towards MSMEs. Now, is there an estimate of how much, what was the dues that companies had claimed as expenditure, and which has not actually been paid to the MSMEs?
Sanjay, you want to answer on?
On your second question, that is on the MSMEs, well, we don't have that data. Certainly, we don't have that data. And it's not, I mean, we don't take that data from the taxpayers in their returns. So that data we will not have. But certainly, you know, we are all aware of this huge problem of timely payments not being made to the MSMEs. So in that direction, you know, this is certainly a positive step. Coming to your first question on the exemption-less regime, let me say that for companies, the 22% tax regime that we got, 61% of our tax now, the corporate tax, more than 60% is actually coming from the exemption-free tax regime. Individuals' data we will not have, but we are very hopeful that this particular scheme for individual taxpayers, the PIT, I think the majority would prefer. I mean, all of you, if you all do your own calculations, I think majority here would be now wanting to shift irrespective of their incomes and the deductions and exemptions that they claim. They would be finding it more attractive to shift to the new tax regime, majority of them.
Ma'am, very good afternoon. Congratulations on a great budget. It's very clean, simple, nicely done. Ma'am, one quick question on CAPEX and one more on petroleum subsidy. Ma'am, your CAPEX for RE is lower actually in terms of the spend as of now. But the target is, you know, greatly stepped up for FY24. So what gives the confidence that it will be all utilized? That CAPEX RE is lower, ma'am. 7.28 versus slightly lower. And a big jump for FY24. So what gives the government the confidence that all of it is going to be utilized and well spent? That's one, ma'am. And second, ma'am, on the petroleum front, the LPG subsidy has been kept pretty low. You had announced certain additional measures last year in May, along with the deep cuts in excise on petrol, diesel. So what happens to those announcements regarding LPG subsidy? They have not been rolled over. And plus, ma'am, there is a demand coming in from oil cores now after LPG losses that you have made good by giving them money, that something needs to be done on fuel also. So would the government consider?
What was the last bit? Something has to be done for who?
Basically, demand coming in from oil cores in terms of...
oil marketing companies.
Yes, cash compensation
The money
for
which
fuel.
is now being given is not for that.
Not for that, ma'am. So, all of that.
So, on your first question on capital expenditure. So, yes, the revised estimates are about 97% or 98% of the budget estimate. Yes, there is a slight deviation. It's mainly on the state capital expenditure, which is falling short of the 1 lakh crore. Actually, the central capital expenditure is going to exceed the budget estimates. State capital expenditure is not expected to reach the 1 lakh crore figure because some portions of the state capital investment scheme have reform conditions. So some states have not been able to meet some of the conditions. Therefore, we expect, I think the figures are there, about 76% of the state capital expenditure scheme is likely to be spent. That's the revised estimate. So the shortfall is actually on the state side, not on the central side. Point number one. What gives you the confidence for next year? I think if you look at the allocations that have been made, they've made in actually the increments are in 4 clear areas. One, railways. The railways has enough projects to absorb the additional capital expenditure. The second is highways. They have adequate projects running to absorb this capital expenditure. The third is states, 30,000 crores. Now, yes, there will always be a challenge, but I think the states are gearing up now. This 2 years of this experiment has helped them to improve their spending capacity. And we are also seeing an uptick in the second half of this year on the state capital expenditure. So I'm reasonably confident that the states will absorb the 1,30,000 that has been provided. And the other big item on the central side is the petroleum capital expenditure, which is for retrofitting of refineries to meet emission standards and pollution standards, and partly for augmenting our strategic reserves. So these, I'm quite confident that we'll meet the expenditure targets.
Please.
तरुण शर्मा फ्रॉम जी बिजनेस। मैम, जो डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट का जो टारगेट है वो 65,000 से 50,000 किया है और नेक्स्ट ईयर का 51,000 किया है। तो मैम, इससे हम ये समझें कि जो दो गवर्नमेंट बैंक का जो प्राइवेटाइजेशन होना था और जो दो इंश्योरेंस कंपनीज का जो प्राइवेटाइजेशन होना था वो अब 2024 के बाद ही संभव हो पाएगा, उससे पहले नहीं हो पाएगा, क्योंकि मैम जो टारगेट ये कर रहे हैं। दूसरा सवाल मेरा संजय सर से है।
जैसा कि आपको विदित है कि डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट तो मार्केट कंडीशंस और कई चीज़ों से निर्भर करता है, तो उस हिसाब से जो प्रैक्टिकल और प्रूडेंट टारगेट है वो रखा गया है।
Ma'am, I am Monica from the New Indian Express. Ma'am, what was the need to lower effective tax rate for high income group at this point in time? And also tax collection at source has been increased from 5% to 20% or on overseas tour package. So what is the reason behind this massive increase?
The tour packages are generally taken by people whose effective tax rate is certainly more than 30%. So if we are charging them 20% TDS, I don't think it is high. Our attempt always has been to charge TDS at more or less similar rates, if not exactly the same rates. So that answers your question number one. Question number two on, I think you are referring perhaps to surcharge, which has been reduced. Well, our rates, the highest tax rates in our country were amongst the highest, even more than, some of the developed countries. And so, in any case, it was introduced as an interim measure, and so that has now been reduced so that the effective tax rate, highest effective tax rate becomes 39%.
I'd just like to supplement that. There is a consistent theme, if you see, both on the new tax regime and on the changes that you're seeing in this budget, that the move is towards lower rates but fewer avoidance measures and exemptions. So if you look at high net worth individuals, there are a number of tax avoidance removal measures in this budget, along with the reduction in surcharge. So if you look at market-linked debentures, if you look at very high-value insurance policies, and a few other measures, so the marginal rate is coming down, but some of the devices used predominantly by those in that highest marginal tax rate are also being rationalized. So it's not necessarily a net reduction, it is a reduction from a high marginal rate inducing certain avoidance devices to a lower marginal rate with fewer opportunities to avoid.
74, please.